Welcome, everybody, to another episode of I'm Not the Book Expert, but She Is. I am your host, Maggie, and I don't know if we have a book expert this episode, but I am joined by Rachel.
Hello, everybody.
And we have a special co-host today.
Oh, yes. I have Cash, my dog, with me right now. My husband is currently at work, but we wanted to get this recording done. So if you hear some noises in the background, there's a good chance that it is Cash.
He is a very good boy, and he has much to contribute to our discussion today, I'm sure.
Very much so. And I bet we can even post a picture of him on Instagram if anybody wants to meet Cash.
Yes, I think that would be a brilliant idea. He even has his own Instagram.
He does have his own Instagram. Now you're going to make me go look it up, Maggie.
Am I? I wasn't suggesting it. I was just going to say, we can even tag him in our post and get all his followers to listen to our podcast.
Well, I feel like I need to give the plug for my husband who runs the Instagram, but it's Cash the dog.
Cash.
And he is rather cute. Cash the dog.
He's a good boy. You would be blessed by following him.
He's also a little poop head, but I think I'm kind of supposed to say that because I am his owner. I very much love him. He also drives me crazy.
That's just how children and animals be.
Yes, this is accurate.
So, Rachel, we have finished a whole season of podcasting.
An entire season. It's crazy.
This is going to be, I'm going to say this and hope that nothing comes up because we're recording this ahead of time. This is going to be the 14th episode of our podcast. And if it
isn't, then I probably somewhere screwed up with the editing.
That is highly unlikely because you always do an excellent job with the editing.
I always do a job. I'm not going to be excellent.
Aren't we all just doing a job? I am doing a job. Is it a good job? Is it a bad job? It is just a job.
Oh, for sure. And somewhat in my defense, my husband does this for a living. So my comparison is the podcasts I listen to, which are all professionally edited, and then my husband's editing, and he is a professional who edits podcasts. So I have a very high standard.
We're both just chronic overachievers. So why we decided to do a podcast, which is something that neither of us are greatly experienced in, is kind of beyond me. But we're having a grand time, and that's really what matters.
Yes. I'm not going to add anything else.
That was a very hesitant yes.
I was thinking, and then I was thinking if I wanted to add anything else, and then I decided not to.
That's fair. But we finished a season. I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around that.
It feels weird. Honestly, I didn't know if we were going to make it this far.
You doubted us.
Yes, but not in the, we're not going to go through with it way. In the, we are both very busy individuals way. It wasn't a lack of faith. It was a life could hit us flat in the face and we might have to stop.
And to be fair, life did hit us in the face several times, in fact, which is why the release schedule got a little garbled.
Yes, but we did.
But it worked out. And now we have a podcast.
Yes, and we have a podcast and we have a semi-established listenership, which is just weird. Also, shout out to my coworkers who've been listening. Love you guys. Nobody
in my personal, well, actually, that's not true. Somebody did tell me they've been listening. A friend of ours from college has been, a couple of friends of ours from college have been listening, at least here and there. Because I did have someone text me hey, I haven't read these books that you've talked about. Do you think I'd like them? And I was like, to be honest, I'm not sure they're your vibe. And they're like, great, I'm going to listen to your episode anyway. And I was like, perfect, excellent. That's what I want to hear.
And we even have a professor from college who has listened to our podcast.
Oh, so, yeah.
Shout out to our professor. And my one student. Actually, we're up to 2 students now.
Woo!
My 2 students who listen. Shout out to y'all.
Excellent.
And then my sister. who's still the number one fan.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure. So
sorry, I didn't expect it to go like this.
I wasn't okay, to be honest, like we've been planning out our episodes a little bit more, but I was kind of like, let's just wing it for the wrap up because I don't really know what we want to do. But
honestly, it's our vibe.
But do you want to just talk about, like, we read 8 books this season,
mm-hmm. and
they were all duologies. So Rachel led us through 2 of them, and I led us through 2 of them, more or less. So I don't know. I'm just gonna list them off real quick in order that we read them in, and then I kind of would like. I want to hear. Rachel specifically told me not to look at her rankings of the books from this season. And I have also hidden my rankings of the books from this season from her. So I think after I'm going to list them off, and then I think we should go through and give our ratings or our rankings in order.
I'm here for this.
So we read One of Us is Lying and One of Us is Next, which were by Karen M. McManus.
Mm-hmm.
Then we read Vicious and Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. We read Warcross and Wild Card by Marie Lu. And then we read The Merciful Crow and the Faithless Hawk by Margaret Owen. I've been typing her name out all day for certain things, and I really just blanked on her name just now. But I got it.
Margaret Owen and Maureen Johnson, I've read so much this year that I just abbreviate their names now to M.O. and M.J. because like the only people I talk to about those books already know who I'm talking about. So why should I write out their full name? That's fair. And I don't mean that like maliciously. It's like I have to write their name like 5 times in a paragraph. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to do that. Yeah. So Rachel, let's start with do we want to start from the bottom and go to the top? We did not talk about this ahead of time. No, we did not. I mean, we can, but I already think we know what my number 1 and number 2 are. Yeah, that's not really a surprise. Yeah. But let's just keep the listeners in suspense, quote unquote. Okay. Let's start with your number 8. So what was your let's preface this. I feel like it's fair to say all of the books that we read this season were good, like even great. Yes, I can objectively say that. So being like a number 8 on the list, being at the bottom of the list, does not mean that this was a bad book. Objectively, I can say that. It does not mean it was the worst book we've ever read. Objectively, I can say that, yes. Rachel sounds like she's testifying in a court of law right now. I am not denying that fact. Well, Rachel, what was your least favorite book that we read this season? What was your number 8? Vengeful. I'm so surprised. Objectively, it was a great book. Mm-hmm. Personally, I did not like it. I think that's fair. Like, it has all the trappings of being like a good book, right? Mm-hmm. It just wasn't really your vibe. Which is weird because Vicious is very much a Rachel book. Yes. But Vengeful just didn't do it for you. I'm trying to think of another example because I've definitely read books like that. I just can't think of any off the top of my head. Because like every book that I can think of that I have strong disliking feelings about, I'm like, no, this is an objectively bad book. Mm-hmm. I can give like an opposite example where it maybe doesn't seem like a Rachel vibe, but is very much a Rachel book. Mm-hmm. Like Song of Achilles does not come off as a Rachel book. Yeah. And then it was my favorite read for January. It beat out Vicious. It beat out Vicious, and we'll talk about that when we get to the Vicious, where it's ranked on mine. Mm-hmm. My number 8 was One of Us is Next. That's fair. I mean, it was good. I still really enjoyed it. I think I still rated it 4 stars on Goodreads and Storygraph. It just wasn't like my favorite. Mm-hmm. I felt
I enjoyed it. I just don't feel strongly about it as much as I feel strongly about other books. So that's really all I have to say about that.
One of Us Is Next was my number 7.
Oh, and my number 7 was Vengeful.
Oh, that's funny. So we just flip-flopped them.
We just swapped them. Okay. Tell me about One of Us Is Next.
One of Us Is Next. So I've read all of Karen M. McManus's books.
Right.
And at least once. And I can say that. I wish I could say I've read each of them twice, but there's one of her released books that I've only read once, so I can't say that. Gosh darn it. It's the one that like just came out a couple
Well, then you need to read it again.
Well, I kind of have a couple other books I want to read.
We'll get to that later.
Yes, we will. And it just, in comparison to her other books, because all of her books are very twisty, turny, kind of all over the place. But this one was just even more so. And it's not my favorite. But Maggie, tell me why you ranked Vengeful as number 7 on yours.
Again, not my favorite book that we read this season, obviously, and not even really my favorite V.E. Schwab book, but I think I still enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think I like it almost more conceptually than I like it in its execution, which is a weird distinction to make.
I can get behind that.
But I enjoy the broader aspects of it, but like if you get down to the nitty gritty, it's not my favorite.
I think that's fair.
Like I enjoy that we get to see the characters again. I enjoy that we get to see more of their stories. But like the smaller things, I'm just kind of ambivalent about it.
Yeah, I got you. I liked seeing some characters again in Vengeful, but
yes,
it was upsetting at a lot of points.
That is very fair, I think.
But I can get behind I like it in theory, but not in practice.
Yeah. What was your number 6?
My 5 and 6 are tied.
Oh.
And I have an observation for after this about why these books tied and why another series of books tied. But my 5 and 6 tie was Warcross and Wildcard.
Okay, I put Wildcard at number 6 for me.
Okay. I just felt like I couldn't separate that duology, and I think that's something that we're going to talk about after this.
Yeah.
But I really liked the story, and I really liked the two of them. And I didn't feel like I could separate the two stories, probably partially because of me, because I read them like literally one right after the other. I finished one and started the next one without any sort of break. But if I had to rank the two of them, I probably liked Warcross more than I liked Wildcard. So I actually listed them: 5 Warcross, 6 Wildcard.
Yeah, but they do kind of go together.
Oh yeah, they bleed into each other.
I mean, my only thing was obviously Warcross is higher on this list for me as well. I like Wildcard, but one of the things I really like about Warcross is the Warcross games, and we don't get to see as much of that in Wildcard. So it's kind of like, it's good, but it's not my favorite.
Yeah, that's fair.
What was your
number 5? Because I just did my 5 and 6.
Oh, my number 5 was One of Us Is Lying.
That makes sense.
So it's kind of like right in the middle for me.
Yeah.
And I had a very brief conversation with somebody at a dinner the other night where we were talking about mystery books, and she was like, "Oh, have you read One of Us Is Lying?" And I was like, "Yes, I love that book." So like, I do still really enjoy it, and it might even be something that I read again someday, especially because I have a physical copy now and I'd like to annotate it sometime. But yeah, very much would recommend. Good book.
Makes sense. That was my number 4.
Okay. How do you feel about One of Us Is Lying?
I really like One of Us Is Lying. I don't think it's Karen M. McManus's best work. I think her best book is The Cousins.
Okay.
Which was not part of our podcast.
Yeah.
I think of all of the Karen M. McManus books, that might be the one you would like the most.
The cousins?
Yes. I think the others are a little too twisted based on your reaction to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder.
That's fair.
And I say that lovingly.
When I was reading A Good Girl's Guide to Murder a couple months ago, I just kept texting Rachel, like, what the heck is going on? What the heck is going on? What the heck is going on? What does this mean? Why are people like this? People are terrible. I hate everything.
And I had to just keep saying, just keep reading. It's worse.
Still a very good book. It was still a very good book. It just ended up being very deeply upsetting for me for some reason that I did not expect.
Yes. And that series, again, we're talking about a series that wasn't even part of our podcast this season, but book 1 of that series was my favorite. Book 2 was my second favorite, and book 3 it gave me so much anxiety and I did not like it.
Yeah. But would you say, going back to One of Us is Lying, I almost feel like that I haven't read any of Karen Emick Manus's other work, but I almost feel like One of Us is Lying might be her most accessible, like a good starting place for people who are being introduced to her. But that might just be because it's also been adapted into a television or like a mini series. So I don't know.
I think it's a little bit harder to get into because there are 5 different perspectives. Whereas in terms of like the number of perspectives, that has 4 perspectives. The Cousins has 3. Two Can Keep a Secret has 2. And then the other one has 3. So I think Two Can Keep a Secret is maybe, in terms of like keeping track of different perspectives, the easiest one to keep track of.
Okay.
But that one has a really kind of twisty, turny timeline.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, now you have Rachel's perspective on Karen Emick Manus.
I love all of them.
Yes.
Just for the record.
My number 4 was Warcross. So that ranked higher for me. Hello again, Cash. I liked Warcross. It was fun and exciting and made me want to play video games.
That's fair.
And I don't know. I really like Marie Lu's world building and I like her characters a lot. So
it seems, as someone who has read the book, like it's a very approachable way to go into sci-fi, and it's a very approachable book to just like blindly go into.
Yeah. I find that I don't like a lot of heavy-handed sci-fi, and that's not just in books, that's in a lot of other media. Like I was trying to figure out why I really got into like this one sci-fi anime and I couldn't get into this other sci-fi anime, and I realized it's because one of them is a lot more into the thick of it's just very technical and very dense, and I was just like, this ain't for me.
Yeah, I got you.
So Warcross would definitely recommend for all you gamers out there.
I have actually recommended those books to a couple of my students.
Yes. Rachel, what was your number 3?
My number 3 was Vicious by V.E. Schwab.
Woo!
So I don't think anybody is surprised that I ranked it so highly. And like you shouldn't be surprised that I ranked it so highly.
It's because of Victor, isn't it?
It is 100% because of Victor. And like I said before, it was almost my top read for January. However, Vengeful knocked it down just slightly below Song of Achilles.
Oof.
So Song of Achilles was my top read for January.
And that was I'm just going to say this now. I know we'll talk about Vicious again in a minute. Vicious was my number 2, actually. So I'll just throw that out there. We'll talk about my 3 and 1 in a second here. The options are limited, but I just want to say the Vicious episode was really fun because like I got to bring Charmaine in and she offered a really interesting perspective about like morally gray characters and why we think they're hot and etc. I also just really love Vicious. It's really great. I'm really here for the dynamic between Victor and Eli. I just love kind of analyzing that. I love those kinds of character dynamics. If you knew me, you wouldn't be surprised by that fact. Yeah, Vicious, good. Would recommend.
I also really liked my rant about Serena.
Yeah, Serena is garbage. I
So
hear the pitter
wait.
patter.
Yes, he walked downstairs. You
Okay.
said Vicious is your number 2.
Yeah. So I know you said you couldn't split them up. I told myself I had to I told myself I couldn't have any ties. That was the rule I made for myself and only for myself. I put the Merciful Crow.
We did not talk about this beforehand.
We did not talk about this beforehand. So my number 3 was the Merciful Crow, and my number 1 was the Faithless Hawk.
Huh. I kept mine together.
Yes.
But I also
can I share my rationality here?
Yes. Can I say one thing before you do that?
Sure.
I did not self-impose I have to split them up.
I know. So
please continue with what you were going to say.
I almost switched Vicious and the Merciful Crow, but I decided I liked Vicious a little bit more than the Merciful Crow. The first time I read the Merciful Crow, I really enjoyed it, but I didn't know it was going to be one of my favorites. That's really got more out of it the second time that I read it, which is why rereading books is good. But that was kind of why I ranked it a little bit lower. Not that I think it's bad, just like it was more of my love story with the Merciful Crow was much more of a slow burn. And with the Faithless Hawk, it was much more of an insta love. Let's put it that way.
I can get behind that.
I also just really love the Faithless Hawk because there's a little bit more like intrigue, which I'm a big fan of. And I'm really a fan of the character development that we see in that book specifically.
Yeah.
And Jasamir might be my favorite character, actually.
Didn't I say that?
I mean, I think he might be my favorite character overall.
Wait, what?
I don't know. I go back and forth. I feel weird making these kinds of declarations, but I really love Jasamir.
I love that for you. This is why you are a phoenix.
Maybe. Are you still upset about that? It's been like a week.
I'm still upset that I am neither achieving an owl or a crow.
I'm so sorry.
Because out of all of the casts, those would be the ones that I would most easily fit into as I am now, right?
Like, yes.
I'm sorry. I'm just self-declaring myself as an owl who travels with the crows.
I think that's fair.
So
I'll be waiting for your fan fiction on Archive of Our Own.
To match the one other fanfic on there.
Yeah, shout out. I did not read it because I don't read a lot of fanfic, but I was very curious the other day if there was any fanfic of the Merciful Crow. So shout out to the one author who has written Merciful Crow fanfic. I'm sure it's delightful. And if you are a fanfic person, it is out there. You just got to find it.
Indeed. So I couldn't separate the two, but are we really all that surprised? Like, they were my favorite reads from last year. They are probably among my favorite books of all time. Like, straight up, full stop, period. And like, part of me is rejoicing in I'm such a hipster, like my favorite books aren't super well known, and like mourning the loss of all of the other like potential fan art or potential like fan created products and bookish materials that could go along with it.
Yeah. Can I give myself a tiny little plug?
Yes.
So I don't do fan art necessarily, but I do one of my pandemic hobbies that I picked up a couple years ago was making custom Funko Pops. I really wanted to make some Six of Crows ones. And so I do have those. I've made some, the first two I made were Day and June from the Legend trilogy, which is by Marie Lu. And that is my favorite series of hers. So I started with those. I made some Six of Crows ones. I've made Percy and Annabeth from Percy Jackson. And right now, who else have I made? I made a bunch of Shadow and Bone ones. Hold on, I'm gonna go look at the shelf. I did all the
Alina.
crows. I made Alina, I made Jenya, and I made Nikolai.
Yes.
From Shadow and Bone.
I don't know why I listed Nina outside of the crows.
I mean, she does appear outside of that series. She appears in King of Scars. So like, You got that
Yes.
going for her. Also, poor Wylan, his head keeps falling off. I feel terrible about it. The super glue I bought did not work, but
It's
that's besides the
actually
point.
really funny.
It's kind of hilarious. I sent he fell off the shelf once and his head popped off again. And I sent it to a friend. I was like, Wylan lost his head again. She says, I always thought he had a good head on his shoulders. This is surprising. All that to say, my current project is I am making a figurine for Phi from the Merciful Crow. And I have stalled out a little bit on it. But I'm hoping to work on her more this weekend, when by the time you hear this episode, it will be several weeks since then. But if you want to follow along with the progress, I've been posting some of it on my Twitter account. I don't always promote my personal Twitter and stuff, but you can find me on Twitter at WriterMags, and I'll hopefully be posting more updates there. If that is something you're interested in, seeing me make Phi out of a Funko Pop. And I'm going to do Tavin and Jasmine eventually too. Also, Vanya from the Little Thieves. I just have dismembered Funko Pops sitting in a cart in my living room because I have so many projects I want to work on.
It's hilarious. But I'm continuing with this self-plug of yours because Maggie tweeted at the author, Margaret Owen.
Oh my gosh.
And first of all, Margaret Owen retweeted it and was like, look at this. And she,
and it wasn't even done.
No, and I just
but yeah, so we love The Merciful Crow, but seriously, like, these are really good books, and if you like YA fantasy, or if you just like fantasy in general, these are definitely top tier, and I wish more people would read them, and I hope more people come back to read them, because Little Thieves seems to be getting a lot of traction still.
Yes, yeah. And so I recommended these to one of my students, and I let her borrow my copies of The Merciful Crow and The Faithless Hawk. And first of all, she took forever to read the first one, and I was like, okay, whatever. But I was like, hey, like, I'm going to need these back soon because I'm going to be recording a podcast about it. And she came back, like, I told her that like on a Friday, and then she was out the next time I had her. So the next time I had her was either a Wednesday or a Thursday. And she was like, I need The Faithless Hawk because I read this entire book in one day and I am livid right now. And I was like, girl, I got you. Girl, I got you. And since then, in every single one of her AP essays that she's written for me, she has mentioned the books.
Excellent.
It's been great.
Good.
They are, like, again, favorite books of all time.
Mm-hmm. I do want to point something out from like your ranking list, because this will kind of be a nice segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about.
I think so. This is the same observation I made.
Yeah. Can I make the observation, or do you want to make the observation?
You can make the observation.
So we kind of almost had two different kinds of duologies this season, right? We had the ones that were sort of standalones and then had sequels, and then we had ones that were actually like written as duologies. So yes. One of Us is Lying is a standalone novel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it has a sequel, One of Us is Next, and Vicious and Vengeful work the same way. They're both also supposed to be getting a third book at some point, but at least with Vicious, we have no idea if or when. And then the One of Us is Lying.
One of Us is Back.
One of Us is Back is like next year or something like that.
Mm-hmm. There's
some far-flung time.
There's a Karen M. McManus book coming out in August. And then I think One of Us is Back is coming out in 2023.
That seems so far away.
I know, but it really isn't that far.
Don't say things like that.
We are almost 1/3 of the way through 2022 at the time of this recording.
Shh. Hush. No. You speak bad things.
I speak the truth. Maggie, I just need to get through June, right? That's the end of the school year. I need to get through June.
So that makes sense why you grouped Wildcard. Wow, let me get those in the right order. Warcross and Wildcard and The Merciful Crow and The Faithless Hawk together, because they're one story together. Yeah. And you need both books to have the beginning, middle, and end, really.
Not that each book doesn't have their own beginning, middle, and end, but
Right.
collectively they create a more cohesive story.
They create a moat.
Okay, so I've been editing the Merciful Crow and the Faithless Hawk episodes, and my enunciation was terrible.
I felt like we were all struggling, but we were having a really good time.
And you know what? I am here for the energy that we created in the studio that day.
I feel like Leah might have been the most put together between the three of us.
For sure. She also didn't talk as much as us,
but like
what she was still the most important.
Yeah. Yes. Because I didn't realize I was getting headaches because of my allergies, so I was just chugging Tylenol all day and drinking tea and trying not to like feel horrible. It was like, I feel fine now, by the way. But good. Yeah, that was an experience, and we had good energy though.
We did. You can listen to the first episode of The Merciful Crow because we released that today.
We did. And by the time this episode comes out, so everybody else can hear it, you can hear all of those episodes.
Indeed.
We recorded for 5.5 hours.
It was so long.
But it felt like not that much time had passed.
Yeah. We did break it up. So we did like 2 hours in the morning, and then we got lunch, came back, and we recorded The Faithless Hawk.
Yeah. Still.
You said you were feeling it in your vocal folds, which I can sympathize with, but as a teacher, that's just like a normal day for me.
I wasn't used to doing that much talking all at once. Yeah. And I felt it like the rest of that day and the day after, like my voice was just raw. And you might even be able to hear it at the end of the recording. I don't know.
We even talked about recording this overview that weekend, and we just
Rachel brought it up once, and I was like, yeah, that sounds good. And then she didn't bring it up again because I think she noticed. And I was like, so thank you, Rachel, for saying no to the things that I can't say no to.
I got you. And for the record, I didn't suggest it like because
you did not suggest it maliciously.
No, and I didn't even suggest it before we had started recording. Right? I had suggested it before we started recording, not after we had started recording.
Yeah.
So it was just like, hey, if we wanted to knock this all out, then we can. But I decided just to not bring it up again.
She's got my back. And I got your back.
Indeed. There is a reason that we have broken up our division of labor the way we have, because for a while it was like whomever was the expert was doing the editing, and then the other person was doing like the social media stuff. But we have since changed that to Maggie does almost all of our social media stuff minus TikTok, and I do all of the editing. And I think that division of labor has really worked for us.
And really the only reason I don't do TikTok, first of all, it was Rachel's idea. So I said, you run with it. And I'm happy to help her, except my phone is as old as the hills, and it will simply set itself on fire if I even try to do anything with TikTok. I did post a TikTok once, but it was something that I had filmed on Snapchat of all things and then just re-uploaded to TikTok. So I am not much help in the TikTok sphere.
Except there is a TikTok that we have planned, like literally just today, that will feature both of us.
Yes.
Because Maggie maybe made a comment to me, and I was like, hey, that reminds me of this TikTok sound, and I don't think we can share it on the podcast without copyright issues.
No.
But we can put it on TikTok because it's a TikTok sound. But needless to say, we fit a sound to a T, and it was really funny.
I like it. It's going to be good.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. That was a really long tangent, and I don't really remember how we got onto it, but
I don't either.
Yeah. It was interesting how we kind of had two different kinds of duologies, and I felt like the reading experiences, like it wasn't necessarily that one was better than the other, but they were just different and unique in that way.
I also liked that we each had one. It's like I had one standalone with a sequel, and then one that was like a planned duology, and then you had one that was a standalone with a sequel and one planned duology.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even notice that.
And that's not even to say that it's necessarily a duology, because Margaret Owen has said that she wished she could write more in the Merciful Crow universe, but
it's just kind of not a good time to be writing plague books.
I mean, yeah.
So Rachel, now that we've finished season 1 and we've got some time before we start recording season 2, which hang in there, we're going to tell you about that in a few minutes here.
Yes,
but before we get into season 2, what are you going to be like reading, or what are you going to be doing in the meantime?
So preface for everyone who doesn't know me, I am a mood reader, right? So my TBR is constantly in flux. It's terrible. And Maggie knows this, because I will start a book. I will get like a third of the way through it and be like, I'm not DNFing this book, but also just not the time right now. And that's totally fine, because normally I'll either come back to it or be like, yeah, no, this was definitely a DNF.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's fair. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So no promises, but these are the books I would like to at least start. So A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians by H.G. Perry, Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, Furyborn by Claire Legrand, Realmbreaker by Victoria Aveyard, because book 2, Bladebreaker, I think, is coming out in June.
Okay.
Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, because I want to read the second one, which sounds weird and isn't even out yet. I just really like the cover aesthetic.
And that's interesting, because didn't most people like hate the cover when that got announced?
Despised it. Yeah.
Dang.
In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and of course the Truly Devious series, because I've been rereading that every month. And like, depending on how much time we have, I might read some more, I might read less. Like, I'm not holding myself to anything. Does that make sense?
I really hope you read Legendborn, because I want to talk to somebody about it. I think, yeah, I know you have it. And the sequel comes out. I'm trying to find the release date. I think it's this year. Aha, it is in November, so it is a little farther away than I thought. But
that's my birth month.
Aha. It is not on your birthday. I did look.
Oh, darn.
I'm sorry. But the cover for the sequel, which is blood-marked, looks so good.
I am really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I wanted to look up the Ninth House sequel again, because I can't remember what it's called.
I can't either. I can tell you what the cover looks like. It's white and has a dead bunny on it.
Huh. I think it fits the vibe. It's called Hell Bent. I read Ninth House and it was good. It wasn't really my thing, but it was good. I think you will like it more than I did.
I think that's fair.
But I am still interested in reading the sequel, which comes out next January.
I was going to say, I think it was just recently announced.
Yeah. I mean, we knew it was coming, but we didn't know what it was called or anything.
But Maggie, what are you going to do during our break?
I don't know. Feel like I'm kind of going into a bit of a reading slump as we're recording this, actually.
I think that's fair.
I did read a couple of things recently. Like, I read A Far Wilder Magic and I loved it. I read a poetry book that I enjoyed. But like, I picked up, and again, this is nothing against either of these authors. So right now I started This Poison Heart by Kaylin Bayron. And I'm having a hard time getting into it, I think I will like it once I get into it. I'm just not sure this is the right time for me to be reading it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's about plants, which I like. And there's also like, I was surprised there's a lot of references to Greek mythology, specifically like the witches of Greek mythology. So like there's characters or people referenced who are named like Medea and Circe or Kirke, if you know Greek. Shout out to my friends who pronounce Circe Kirke. You know who you are. So there's stuff like that that is intriguing to me. And the main character's name is Briseis, who is from the Iliad. As far as we know, she's not a witch, but she sure well could be, because we don't get to know much about her in the Iliad. She's just kind of there.
Okay, wait, is this the one that's associated with Achilles?
Yes.
Thank you. Please continue.
Rachel has not read the Iliad, but she has read the Song of Achilles, which is pretty close.
Hey, we watched that TikTok together about the classicist who was like
the classists.
No.
I know what you're talking about.
That was another one of his TikToks. But he talked about how Madeline Miller is potentially going to shape the retellings of Greek mythology for like years to come.
Yeah. And she knows her stuff. So I don't doubt that you have a good grasp on what happens in the Iliad. I just like to tease you about it.
I have a really good grasp of what happens with Achilles.
Close enough.
And I actually have a better understanding of the Odyssey, because that was actually something I had to read as a freshman in high school. Not the whole thing, but
like enough of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm not sure if I'm gonna read it right now. I did pick it up. I enjoyed the first couple chapters, but I'm playing right now. This morning, actually, not this morning. Last night, I started The City Beautiful by Aidan Polydorus. Yep, I got it.
I'm so proud of you. That's not sarcastic either.
I know. So I started that because I picked that up when we went to a bookstore a few weeks ago. And I am also liking that so far. So far, we already have a murder, so we're off to a good start.
I'm here for this.
Yeah. There might also be ghosts. Have not established this yet. But we've got that. And so I might read that to kind of get me back into my rhythm. And then try to finish This Poison Heart, because I do really want to read it. I love the cover. I love like the hard cover that I have.
Yeah.
And I think I would really like to read it. Other things, go ahead.
Can I just add something real fast?
Of course.
I also feel like I'm heading into a reading slump, and I was talking to Maggie about this earlier. Part of the reason I am pushing through this, and Maggie I think knows the reason, is I made a not a wager per se, but like my students were allowed to issue me a challenge, and I allowed them to give me a reading goal for June. And the kind of consensus was 75. So wow. I have to read 75 books by the end of June to like prove my students wrong. And one student said if I read 100 books by the end of June, he will do something in return. And he is one of our students who listens, so shout out to him. But I feel the need just to I don't know, feel vindicated almost.
Be victorious.
Yes, in the challenge issued by my students. So I'm pushing through.
Yeah. And you've already read 58 books this year, so you are moving right along.
I have read a lot. So if I only reach the 75, that's fine. I'm still going to be really proud of myself. The student that issued the 100 challenge, he and I have a good relationship. So I feel like it's just a like funny challenge. It's not like this is gonna sound weird, but it's not like a malicious challenge where if I don't meet it, like he'll lose respect for me, at least in my opinion. I don't think that's how it'll go. But it's just like I want to do it to prove him wrong. I got you. So
well, I believe in you.
Thank you. Regardless, I'll cross my total number of books from last year this year. So
I also believe that will happen.
But Maggie, what else do you think you'll be doing during our break?
I don't know. I actually don't know if I'll be reading a whole lot other than what I'm reading right now. I'm actually kind of trying to take a break a little bit.
Yeah.
I've taken a break from audiobooks because I've been binge listening through a podcast. Mm-hmm. So that's been kind of my companion when I need some audio to keep me company. I've also just been like playing more video games and watching like more TV and movies, which is not something I do very often.
Which is also totally fine.
But if you've been following along with our podcast, you'll know that Rachel and I talked about The Good Place a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
And I mentioned I'd only seen the first episode and then I just kind of didn't continue. And so I have continued now, and I'm about halfway through the first season of The Good Place. And I do plan to continue watching because now I'm into it.
In sort of an anecdote that goes along with that, when Maggie came to visit, I started cooking food. So I just kind of put on The Good Place and then walked away.
I was kind of like the child that she left. Was like, here, have something entertaining and I'm going to go do the housework. And I said, okay.
Okay, but I did watch with you because I also really like The Good Place. It is probably one of my favorite TV shows of all time. And most of my favorite TV shows are cartoons.
Woo!
Because it's like
you're speaking my language.
Because it's like Scooby-Doo, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Gravity Falls, which I also made Maggie watch this weekend, or last weekend.
Can I just clarify? The only reason I have not continued watching Gravity Falls is because I don't have Disney Plus and I don't feel like paying money for it right now. So I'm going to watch The Good Place first.
And that is totally fair. But I also made her watch The Good Place. And The Good Place just has such a place in my heart. And like,
is it a good place in your heart?
It is a good place in my heart. But my husband and I started watching that over the pandemic. And then my youngest brother watched it. So then we talked about it. And then my entire family watched it together. They watched like all of season 1 in a day.
Huh.
Yeah. So my entire family has watched all of The Good Place.
Interesting.
And it is a TV show I have completed, which is saying something because I often don't complete TV shows because I don't want them to end.
I got you.
But that is one that I completed and still go back to time and time again.
Yeah. Next time you come visit, I'm going to show you some of my favorite shows. I want to get you. I was thinking about it today. I would really like, and I think you would enjoy it. I would like to get you to watch The Dragon Prince. That's a really good animated show.
Isn't it from the creators of Avatar?
Kind of. One of the people, so Aaron Ahaz is the creator of The Dragon Prince, and he's had some controversial stuff that I don't really know about, but that's a thing. But he was one of the lead writers on Avatar, not necessarily a creator, but he's credited with a lot of episodes of that show. And one of the voice actors is the same voice actor as Sokka.
Okay.
And like, you can tell, like, you hear him and I'm like, okay, this is just Sokka, except now he's white.
Yes. Okay. Tracking.
But yeah, that was a total tangent. One of these days we should do something about our favorite TV shows.
We could
just
do it
as like
bonus
yeah. So that might be what I'm doing in our break, but
I'm here for that.
I'm also going to be preparing for our second season.
Yes.
Rachel, would you like to say what our next season's going to be about?
Yeah. So Maggie is going to be our exclusive book expert for next season, minus a potential bonus episode, which is, you're going to be flabbergasted when we tell you about that. But
flabbergasted.
Flabbergasted. Are you making fun of my SAT word?
No, I love the word flabbergasted.
It's a great word.
Let's not leave the people in suspense. Tell them what our second season is about. What am I the expert on, Rachel?
Maggie is the expert on Percy Jackson, and we are specifically talking about the first Percy Jackson series, the second being Heroes of Olympus, which technically isn't exclusively
that's
Percy,
a whole other
that's
thing.
not the point. So I have actually started The Lightning Thief to hopefully keep me from going into this reading slump, and I am so very excited.
Yeah, I'm gonna save like all of our talk about Percy Jackson for the introduction, but like honestly, Rachel, we could not have timed this better. Like as we're recording this, we've just gotten the announcement for who's going to be Percy Jackson in the TV series that's being filmed this summer.
Like to the point, like Maggie was here this past weekend, and we found out on Monday.
On Monday, it was Monday.
And I sent it to her and I said, I almost called you because I
was at work
so
and
important.
I was like, you should have called me. I was on my lunch break and I would have answered.
It was impeccable timing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll link to the story in our podcast description if you're a Percy Jackson fan, but yeah, we are so excited, and I'm just excited to talk about Percy Jackson. It is one of my favorite things, and not everything that I've read in my like middle school and high school years has stayed with me. Not even everything I've enjoyed from those years has stayed with me. Percy Jackson is one of those things that has stayed with me. And I am excited to talk about it with Rachel. And I'm hoping to bring in one of my really dear friends and maybe some other folks if I can think of any. It's just going to be a really good time. So we're going to read The Lightning Thief, The Sea of Monsters, The Titan's Curse, The Battle of the Labyrinth, and The Last Olympian. I forgot the title of the last book.
Maggie!
Rachel!
How could you?
I'm the worst.
Just the worst.
I am the worst.
But needless to say, we are both super excited about it. I just read Percy Jackson for the first time last year. I've read.
Can you believe it?
I know. In my defense, I was not a Greek mythology child, and we've talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
I was an ancient Egypt person growing up, so like I read the Kane Chronicles.
Mm-hmm. Rachel saw that shiny book about ancient Egypt in the library and was like, okay, this is going to be my entire personality for the next 6 years.
Except Rachel still has the book and it's still an aspect of her personality. I have my favorite Egyptologists ranked.
That's true.
Not Egyptian gods, not Egyptian pharaohs, Egyptologists.
You know what? It's a good thing. I don't know where that sentence was going. I was just going to say there's nothing wrong with that.
No, and I love it. And eventually, like, the Kane Chronicles are going to be a season because I love them and I love talking about them the way Maggie loves talking about Percy Jackson.
Yeah.
But Maggie is going to be our expert for an entire season.
So I've really got to get myself together.
I'm so excited.
Me too. And I think that wraps it up for our finale. Like, I think we've covered everything, so unless you have anything else you want to say to the people. So we're going to take a couple weeks off of releasing episodes, maybe a week or two. We haven't really decided yet. We're a ways out from it still. But you can expect to see our season 2 episodes coming out. I don't want to make promises of a hard date, but let's say June.
I would say sometime in June.
Sometime in June, just in time for the summer when the season at Camp Half-Blood begins.
Yes. And we will be getting out of school.
We will not be getting kicked out of school like Percy Jackson, though.
We will not have had 6 schools in 6 years.
Yes.
I just made Maggie emotional.
I love the Lightning Thief musical.
And I definitely think we're going to have at least a mini episode talking exclusively about the musical.
We totally have to.
I almost think we should have an episode roasting the movies.
Yeah.
And that will be one of our bonus episodes.
Oh no, I sold them. I had DVDs and I sold them.
I have Disney Plus, and they're both
okay.
Except here's the thing: I've never seen the second one.
Ooh. Oh, we're gonna have a grand time. It's gonna be a great time, everybody. So
it's gonna be fantastic.
If you want to catch up, if you haven't read Percy Jackson, first of all, you should. Second of all, find an audiobook, get them from your library, read them, and be ready for our second season coming out in June.
I'm so excited. I can't
Me
wait.
too. And in the meantime, don't forget that you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Book Expert Pod. You can find our website, which is bookexpertpod.wordpress.com, or you can go old school and send us an email at notthebookexpert@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you guys. We'd love to hear what kind of suggestions you have for us. Like, if you're just like, hey, you guys would really like this book and I think it should be part of your podcast, we would love to hear from you. Or just something like, hi, I think you're both crazy, but I love you. That is okay too. So yeah, that's about all we have to say. Anything else you have to say to the listeners, Rachel?
I don't think so. I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys.
Yeah. All right. Well, until next time, we will see you in June at Camp Half-Blood.
Bye, everybody.